The ILO says we are a demand-driven organization, that we go where governments and workers and employers ask us to be involved. And I would say that the demand for the ILO's assistance was not very high in Uzbekistan. The government sent us some proposals that they would be interested in working with us on, and I, as the director of the office, answered them that for us, the ILO fundamental rights and in particular child labor is an important issue on which we would like to engage the government. And the answer that I got was that they were not interested in having that in a program of cooperation, and if that was our condition, they would just say thank you but no thank you and work on these issues by themselves. Child labor is a very serious problem in Uzbekistan, but it's not the only labor problem related to cotton. There's also the problem that most farmers cannot choose what to plant. There's the problem of excessive migration because of low wages in this sector. There's the problem of environmental pollution because of excessive use of pesticides and defoliants. There's a problem of progressive deterioration of the land. And I think it's unlikely that we're going to be able to solve the child labor problem without dealing with some of these other problems as well. It really can't be pulled out and separated from them. But child labor is a good lever, a good way to enter into the discussion. The main thing that the brands and the human rights organizations can do to help bring about an end to forced child labor in Uzbekistan is to decline to buy the cotton, to monitor their supply chains so that people can feel confident that they're not supporting this regime's practices. There are some political avenues open to call on the ILO to use its supervisory mechanisms to monitor the situation and to engage in a dialogue with Uzbekistan about fulfilling its responsibilities under the ILO conventions. A complaint has been lodged by the International Employers Association with the ILO, and the brands and the human rights organizations can certainly write letters and provide other sorts of support for that. In addition, publicity is good because the government of Uzbekistan, in my experience, does not want to be known as an international pariah. I think they're very sensitive to bad publicity, and this is an important tool. An additional one that I would suggest to be added as a possibility would be to show support for the people in the country who have taken some risks to try to make progress on this issue and have ended up in trouble. What basically needs to happen is that the cost of this form of abuse needs to rise. And until it rises, of course, it will be better for them financially to continue to do what they're doing. And I think that this stakeholders group, including the brands and the human rights organizations that are involved in the stakeholders group, are playing an absolutely crucial role in making it more costly, both politically and economically, for the government to continue this practice. Ratification alone is not sufficient. In addition, the government has to enforce the convention. Enforcement is the way by which children will be removed from forced labor. Without that, the ratification might do something to improve the government's image or might provide a political symbol, but it won't provide the real results that everyone is looking for from the government. I think the most important, critical next step for the Uzbek government is to recognize child labor in cotton as one of the worst forms of child labor in the country and to incorporate that into its national action plan on implementation of Convention 182. It's important to recognize that child labor in Uzbekistan is different, fundamentally different than what we're talking about in most other countries of the world. This is state-sponsored forced labor of children. It's not employers, it's not families who are putting the children to work. It is the state itself. So as an absolute first step, before the ILO can do anything to help the government, the government has to renounce this practice and commit itself to cease it. Then the ILO can come in with its monitoring mechanisms, with its technical assistance, with all the resources that it has to assist. I think that the efforts of the companies and the groups so far have been very effective. I felt in my position as the director of the Moscow office that these efforts had gotten the attention of the Uzbek government, and it is alarmed. I felt that alarm. By the same token, I felt that those who are working for change within the country felt the efforts of other people with similar principles on the other side of the ocean, and were very gratified and encouraged by knowing that people in the U.S. were reaching out to express support for their efforts.